This week, you'll hear about a monkey who ate so many immortality peaches that he became literally unkillable. Why giving someone the title Keeper of the Heavenly Horses is maybe the most passive-aggressive insult in Chinese mythology, and how sometimes the best way to end a war with heaven itself is to just trap the guy under a mountain for 500 years. Also, from the scribe's bestiary, the Chinese dragon, a benevolent whisker-sporting weather god that would be deeply offended if you confused it with those European treasure-hoarding murder lizards. Welcome to the Drowsy Scribe. I'm your host, and tonight we're diving into one of the most beloved troublemakers in all of world mythology, Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. If you know Journey to the West at all, you probably know him as the reformed bodyguard who protects a monk on a long pilgrimage. But before all that redemption and character growth, Sun Wukong was an absolute menace who declared war on heaven, ate everything that wasn't nailed down, and made the Jade Emperor, basically the CEO of the universe, seriously consider early retirement. This is that story. Fair warning, there's some violence and a bit of cartoonish gore, but it's more Looney Tunes than Game of Thrones. So we start with a monkey. Not just any monkey, this one was born from a magic stone on the mountain of flowers and fruit, which is already a pretty solid origin story. No parents, no childhood, just a fully formed stone monkey who pops into existence and immediately starts doing backflips. He's clever, he's charismatic, and all the other monkeys on the mountain think he's great. One day, the monkeys are playing near a waterfall, and one of them says, "Hey, whoever's brave enough to jump through that waterfall and see what's on the other side can be our king." Sun Wukong, who isn't called that yet, he's just monkey, immediately volunteers. Because of course he does. He leaps through the waterfall and finds this gorgeous cave behind it, completely furnished, like someone set up a mountain Airbnb and then just left. He calls the other monkeys in, and they all agree, "Yep, you're our king now. Congratulations on your new government position acquired through a dare." He's the Monkey King for a while, and it's great. Lots of fruit, lots of parties, zero responsibilities. But then one day he sees an old monkey die, and he has this existential crisis. He's like, wait, we all die? That's a thing that happens to everyone? That seems bad. So he decides to become immortal. You know, as one does. He leaves the mountain and wanders around until he finds a Taoist sage named Subodhi who agrees to teach him. And Wukong turns out to be an incredible student. He learns the 72 transformations, meaning he can shapeshift into basically anything. He learns cloud walking, which lets him travel thousands of miles in a single somersault. He's getting very powerful very quickly, and Subodhi starts to get nervous. Maybe don't show off so much, Subodhi suggests. You're drawing attention to yourself. Wukong, who has never taken good advice in his life, immediately shows off in front of all the other students. Subodhi kicks him out. "Go home," he says. "And whatever trouble you cause, don't tell anyone I taught you." Which, and I'm calling this now, is the most reasonable thing anyone will say for the rest of this story. Wukong goes back to his mountain and finds out that while he was gone, a demon moved in and started terrorizing his monkey subjects. So he beats up the demon, kills him, and takes his magic staff. Except, staff doesn't quite capture it. This thing is huge, ornate, and weighs over 8 tons. Wukong can shrink it down to the size of a needle and keep it behind his ear, or grow it large enough to hold up the sky. It's called Ruyi Jinggu Bang, and it's basically the most extra weapon in mythology. But he still doesn't have good armor. So you know what he does? He marches into the underwater palace of Ao Guang, the Dragon King of the East Sea, and says, "Hey, I need some armor." Ao Guang is like, "Who is this monkey in my house?" Wukong proceeds to basically wreck the place until Ao Guang gives him a full set of golden chainmail, a phoenix feather cap, and cloud-walking boots just to make him leave. The Dragon Kings of the other 3 seas hear about this, and they're all furious, but what are they going to do? The monkey has an 8-ton staff and 0 chill. Shortly after this, Wukong dies. I should clarify, he dies in the "his time came up on the celestial ledger" sense. 2 demon bailiffs from the underworld show up with chains to take him to the afterlife, which is incredibly rude when you think about it. Wukong wakes up, sees these guys trying to arrest his soul, and says, "Absolutely not." He follows them back to the underworld, still alive, still armed, and demands to see the ledger of life and death. The bureaucrats down there are terrified. They're basically data entry clerks, and this superpowered monkey just kicked down the door. They show him the book, and he finds his own name, Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, destined to die at age 342. Yeah, no, Wukong says. He grabs a brush and just crosses his name out. Then he crosses out the names of all his monkey subjects, too. There, we're all immortal now. And he leaves. The Dragon Kings and the bureaucrats of the underworld both file complaints with heaven. They go to the Jade Emperor, the supreme deity of heaven, the big boss, and they say, "This monkey is out of control. He's robbing dragons, he's vandalizing the afterlife, he's making us all look bad." The Jade Emperor is in a tricky spot. He could send an army to fight Wukong, but that might not work, and even if it did, it would be embarrassing. So one of his advisors suggests, why don't we just give him a job in heaven? If he's part of the bureaucracy, we can keep an eye on him. Which sounds reasonable until you hear what job they give him. They summon Wukong to heaven, and he's thrilled. He's like, yes, I'm being recognized for my talents. And they make him keeper of the heavenly horses. He's a stable boy. They gave him the celestial equivalent of an unpaid internship. For a little while, Wukong doesn't realize he's been insulted. He's genuinely excited. He takes great care of the horses, he feeds them these special herbs, and the horses have never been healthier. He's actually really good at this job. But then one day he asks, "Hey, what rank is this position?" "Oh," says one of the other celestial officials, "it's not ranked." "What do you mean it's not ranked?" "It's below the lowest rank. You're basically a contractor." Wukong loses it. He smashes up the stables, storms out of heaven, and goes back to his mountain. He's furious. His monkeys are like, "What happened? We thought you were doing great." "They tried to humiliate me," Wukong says. "So from now on, I'm calling myself the Great Sage equal to heaven. And if they don't like it, they can come down here and do something about it." Spoiler, they try to do something about it. The Jade Emperor sends an army. Not a huge one. He still thinks this can be resolved with a light show of force. He sends a general named Li Jing, along with his son, Nezha, who is also a whole thing in Chinese mythology, but that's a story for another time. They show up with a few thousand soldiers and basically serve Wukong an eviction notice. Wukong fights all of them, and wins. Nezha is supposed to be this incredible warrior. He's got 6 arms and 3 heads when he's in combat mode, and Wukong just beats him. It's not even close. The heavenly army retreats, and the Jade Emperor gets a report that basically says, yeah, the monkey is really good at fighting. So they try the bureaucracy trick again. Another advisor suggests, okay, what if we give him a real title this time? We make him the Great Sage equal to heaven. Yes, we just let him keep the title he made up, and we give him an office in heaven. No responsibilities, just a fancy plaque and a lot of free time. The Jade Emperor agrees. Wukong is summoned back, and this time they really roll out the red carpet. We're so sorry about the misunderstanding with the horse thing. Here's your new office. You're basically middle management now. Enjoy the complimentary fruit. And for a while, Wukong is happy. He has a title, he has respect, he gets to wander around heaven and chat with various deities. It's great. But then, the Jade Emperor makes a mistake. He's throwing a huge banquet, the Festival of the Immortal Peaches, and he doesn't invite Wukong. Now, these aren't regular peaches. The Queen Mother of the West has this garden of immortality peaches, and they ripen once every few thousand years. The ones in the front of the garden give you a few hundred extra years. The ones in the middle make you immortal and let you float. The ones in the back make you as immortal as the universe itself. It's a very tiered system. The banquet is a big deal. Everyone who's anyone in heaven is invited, except Wukong. He finds out about this because he's wandering around heaven. Remember, no responsibilities. And he asks some other official, "Hey, what's everyone getting ready for?" "The Immortal Peach Festival," the official says. "Oh, fun. When do we leave?" "Oh, you're not on the list." You can see where this is going. Wukong is furious. Again. He's thinking, I'm the great sage equal to heaven. How am I not invited? So he decides to crash the party in the most Wukong way possible. He's going to go early and eat everything before anyone else gets there. He sneaks into the festival hall, but it's not quite set up yet. The food isn't out. So he goes to the garden and just starts eating the peaches. Not one or two. He eats dozens of them. He's eating thousands of years of immortality in one sitting. He's already immortal from crossing his name out of the death ledger, so this is just redundant immortality. Immortality stacking. He's min-maxing his own lifespan. Then he finds the wine. The imperial wine of heaven is also an immortality thing. It's made with all these magical ingredients, and he drinks all of it. Jars and jars of the stuff. At this point, he's very drunk. And while he's stumbling around heaven, he wanders into the palace of Lao Tzu, the Taoist sage. Lao Tzu isn't home, but his pills of immortality are. These are the good stuff. Lao Tzu has been working on these pills for ages. They're 5 times refined golden pills of immortality, and they're just sitting there in a gourd. Wukong, drunk and impulsive, thinks they're snacks. He eats all of them. So just to recap, Wukong has now made himself immortal 4 separate times. He's the most immortal being in the universe. When he sobers up, he realizes what he's done. He's stolen the peaches, the wine, and the pills. Heaven is going to be furious. So he does the only logical thing. He goes back to his mountain and prepares for war. The Jade Emperor is, in fact, furious. He sends a much bigger army this time. Tens of thousands of celestial soldiers, led by his best generals. They surround the mountain of flowers and fruit, and they're ready to end this. Wukong fights all of them. He clones himself. One of his transformations lets him pull out hairs and turn them into copies of himself. And suddenly, there are hundreds of Wukongs, all with magic staffs, all fighting. The heavenly army doesn't stand a chance. The Jade Emperor is starting to panic. He sends for reinforcements from other cosmic beings. He calls in Erlong Shen, this hunter-warrior god with a third eye who's supposed to be unbeatable. Erlong Shen is the guy you call when you need someone beaten and you don't care about collateral damage. Erlong Shen and Wukong fight for hours. They're both shapeshifters, so it turns into this incredible duel where they keep transforming into different things to counter each other. Wukong turns into a bird. Erlong becomes a hawk. Wukong becomes a fish. Erlong becomes an osprey. It's like rock, paper, scissors, but with mythology. Eventually, Lao Tzu, yes, the guy whose pills Wukong ate, gets involved. He's watching the fight from heaven, and he just drops one of his magic bracelets on Wukong's head. It hits him, and Wukong stumbles. That's all Erlong needs. He and the other gods dogpile Wukong and finally capture him. They drag him back to heaven in chains. The Jade Emperor is relieved. Okay, he says, execute him. They try. First they try to cut his head off, but the blade shatters. They try to burn him, but the fire doesn't work. They try lightning. They try everything. Wukong is so immortal at this point that he's basically indestructible. Lao Tzu suggests, put him in my furnace. It's designed to refine pills of immortality. Maybe it can burn away his immortality and make him mortal again. So they lock Wukong in this giant alchemical furnace for 49 days. The furnace burns at cosmic temperatures. It's supposed to reduce him to ash. On the 49th day, they open the furnace. Wukong jumps out. He's fine. Better than fine, actually. The furnace gave him these fiery golden eyes that can see through any transformation or illusion. He's actually more powerful now. And he is done. He fights his way out of the furnace room, grabs his staff, and starts smashing everything in heaven. He's destroying palaces, scattering deities, wrecking thousands of years of celestial architecture. The Jade Emperor locks himself in his throne room and seriously considers abdicating. Finally, someone suggests they ask the Buddha for help. Now, Buddha exists in a different cosmic tier than the Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor runs heaven, but Buddha is beyond that. He's operating on enlightenment logic, not bureaucracy logic. Buddha shows up, and Wukong is mid-rampage. He sees this glowing figure and says, "Who are you?" "I'm the Buddha," Buddha says calmly. "I hear you're causing some trouble." "The Jade Emperor is a coward and a fool," Wukong says. "I'm stronger than any of his generals. I should be in charge. Why shouldn't I be the emperor?" "Tell you what," Buddha says. "If you can jump out of my palm, I'll go tell the Jade Emperor to give you his job. But if you can't, you have to go down to Earth and work off your sentence." Wukong laughs. "I can travel 108,000 miles in a single somersault. Your hand is, what, a foot wide? Deal." Buddha holds out his hand. Wukong jumps. He somersaults through the air, covering impossible distances. He's flying for what feels like forever. Finally, he sees the edge of the universe, 5 massive pillars holding up the sky. "Ha," he thinks. "I've reached the end of everything. Better leave some proof." He writes, "The great sage equal to heaven was here," on one of the pillars. Then, because he's Wukong, he pees at the base of it to really mark his territory. He somersaults all the way back to Buddha's palm and lands with a smug grin. "Okay," he says, "I did it. I reached the edge of the universe. Give me the Jade Emperor's job." Buddha holds up his hand. On one of his fingers, there's tiny writing. "The great sage equal to heaven was here." The pillars were Buddha's fingers. Wukong never left his palm. Before Wukong can process this, Buddha flips his hand over and pushes Wukong down to earth. A mountain appears, just materializes out of nowhere, and lands on top of him, pinning him completely. Buddha writes a seal on the mountain to keep it there. "You'll stay here until someone comes who needs you," Buddha says. "Use the time to think about your choices." And that's it. The war is over. Heaven goes back to normal. The Jade Emperor gets his throne room repaired. Wukong is trapped under a mountain, unable to move, but still alive because he's too immortal to die. He stays there for 500 years. And that's where this part of the story ends. Eventually, a monk named Tripitaka comes along on a pilgrimage to India, frees Wukong, and recruits him as a bodyguard. But that's Journey to the West proper, the redemption arc. This story, The Havoc in Heaven, is about what happens when someone incredibly powerful has zero impulse control and a legitimate grievance about being disrespected. Wukong isn't exactly a villain here. The Jade Emperor really did insult him, twice. But he's not a hero either. He's just chaos in monkey form, and honestly, that's what makes him so enduringly beloved. This version comes from the 16th century novel by Wu Cheng-en, though the Monkey King existed in oral tradition long before that. The lesson, if there is one, maybe don't eat 4 different types of immortality fruit in one afternoon. It rarely ends well. So, from the scribe's bestiary tonight, the Chinese dragon. If your mental image of a dragon involves a giant lizard sitting on a pile of gold and occasionally terrorizing medieval Europe, you need to recalibrate. Chinese dragons, known as Long, are something else entirely. They're divine, benevolent, and they control the weather. They don't hoard treasure, they bring rain. They don't kidnap princesses. They're symbols of imperial power and good fortune. Confusing them with Western dragons is like confusing a lion with a golden retriever. Technically, both are 4-legged animals, but the vibes are completely different. Chinese dragons have this very specific look. Long, serpentine body covered in scales, 4 legs with claws, antlers like a deer, whiskers like a catfish, and these flowing manes. They don't have wings, but they can fly anyway because they're magic. There's a whole classification system. You've got your celestial dragons who guard the heavens, your spiritual dragons who control wind and rain, your earth dragons who manage rivers, and your treasure-guarding dragons who... Okay, fine. Some of them guard treasure, but it's not their main thing. The Dragon Kings are the big deal. There are 4 of them, 1 for each sea.
and they live in these elaborate underwater crystal palaces. Ao Guang, the Dragon King of the East Sea, yes, the one Wukong robbed, is the most senior. They're all technically subordinate to the Jade Emperor, part of the celestial bureaucracy, which is why Ao Guang couldn't just smite Wukong on the spot. He had to file a complaint. Even the dragons have paperwork.
Dragons are associated with the Emperor in particular. The Emperor's robes were covered in dragon embroidery, and his throne was called the Dragon Throne. For a while, it was actually illegal for anyone except the Emperor to wear the five-clawed dragon symbol. Nobles could wear dragons with 4 claws. Commoners? No dragons for you. It was a whole regulated thing. But they're also just part of the landscape. Rivers are said to be governed by dragons. When there's a drought, you appeal to the local dragon to bring rain, which sometimes involve throwing offerings into rivers, or, in harder times, threatening the dragon statue in the local temple. Give us rain or we're taking you outside and leaving you in the sun. That actually happened. Theological hardball. Here's my favorite detail. Chinese dragons can shapeshift. They can become human or shrink down to the size of a silkworm, or grow large enough to fill the space between heaven and earth. There are all these folktales about scholars who befriend a kind stranger, only to discover later that the stranger was a dragon prince in disguise. It's like if every friendly NPC in a video game turned out to be endgame level powerful, but just chose to help you find your lost cat anyway. One story tells of a dragon who fell in love with a human woman, took human form, and married her. They had a peaceful life for years, until one day he got drunk at a party and accidentally transformed back into a dragon. You know, as one does. His wife fainted, the neighbors panicked, and he had to flee back to the sea. The moral of that story is unclear, but I think it's maybe have one fewer drink at the holiday party. The point is, if you meet a Chinese dragon, don't try to fight it. Offer it respect, maybe some incense, and hope it decides you're worth helping. Unlike their Western counterparts, these dragons are mostly on humanity's side. They just also expect you to mind your manners, which seems fair for a divine being made of storms and rivers who could absolutely drown your entire province if they wanted to. Also, they have excellent mustaches. This seems unimportant, but nearly every artistic depiction gives them these long, flowing whiskers, and honestly, it's a good look. Distinguished. Regal. You can't be mad at a dragon with a mustache like that, which might be the whole point. And that's our episode. If you've got a favorite myth or folktale you'd like to hear, or a creature you think belongs in the bestiary, I'd love to hear about it. Next time, maybe we'll find a story where the protagonist doesn't eat quite so many immortality peaches and start quite so many wars. Though honestly, where's the fun in that? Until then, remember, if heaven offers you a job with no rank, it's not a promotion. The Drowsy Scribe, signing off.